Hello, everyone. I'm Shannon from Dubb.com, and welcome to the Connection Loop podcast. Our guest today is John Walker. And John, why don't you just give a little backstory about who you are, and then we'll get into this really interesting conversation.
Sure, Shannon. It's great to be here. This is a fun thing for me. It's not something I've done before. I worked in telecommunications for better part of 3 decades and had a really amazing opportunity there to deliver enormous technology projects of really varying sizes, but on a national scale. A lot of work in the point of sale space, redesigning and rolling out a new platform for our company in that regard. Several billing system conversions. One of the last things that I was working on, it was really exciting and kind of groundbreaking for North America, was putting Salesforce.com in a multi-channel retail environment. A lot of people are familiar with Salesforce.com.
And this is for Verizon, right?
Yes, that's right, for Verizon.
Gotcha.
A lot of people think of Salesforce.com or had anyhow as a B2B tool, which it certainly was and has been and continues to be, but it's also useful in a retail application. So we rolled that out and had really good success there. And then as they say, sometimes it's time to turn the page and try something different. And that's what I did last July. There was a lot of uncertainty and things going on with the pandemic and all. And I left Verizon and started farming. And that's what I've been doing since.
Wow. Started farming. Okay. It's so much to get into here. I mean, the title of this podcast is Lessons from a Janitor Turned CEO. So I want to get into some of that backstory and about your family history, which is great. So, I mean, let's start there actually. And then let's get into your journey going from the world of, corporate Verizon technology to farming.
Sure.
So yeah, it's gonna be a fun podcast, but yeah, start with the backstory, please.
Yeah. I mean, I think just to be clear, I'm not the janitor turned CEO. The concept there was really was things that my grandfather told me when I was a young kid. He was not able to get into World War II. He had tuberculosis, and one of the things that one of the jobs he ended up getting here was he was actually sweeping the floor at a boiler tube company out in Pittsburgh. And long story short, he ended up owning that and being the chief executive at that business. So it was, when he had nuggets of wisdom, in retrospect, they were, really meaningful to me. And the one of the things that stands out for me the most from him was, if you just do what you say you're going to do, just do what you say you're going to do, you'll be ahead of 70% of the people. And if you do a little bit more than that, there's no stopping you. And it's an extremely simple concept, right? But so many people don't do what they say they're going to do. And it's one of those things you've got to build trust with your customers, and being reliable and doing exactly what you say is one of those lessons from him that really stuck with me.
That's powerful, actually. It's one of those things that when you hear it, you think, wow, why haven't I thought of that? Because there's so many times where you'll say, even to yourself, maybe not even publicly, I'm going to do this, and then maybe not following through. That's great advice.
Sure.
Yeah. So any other lessons that you learned we share at the top of this podcast?
Well, I think that thread kind of carried through with all of what we did with our customers and the way we thought about our customer experience at Verizon and what we did and what they continue to do there. Let's see, where can I start?
Yeah,
one of the things is, pardon?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead. No, yeah.
One of the things is, obviously you're in business to make money. That's what you're there to do. But if that's the only reason you're there, and you don't get some level of enjoyment out of providing service to customers, you're going to have somewhat of an uphill battle, I think, in the long run. So the degree to which you can see your business through the eyes of a customer, it's really important. I mean, I was a guy who started out in network technology, network engineering, moved over to IT, and from the IT department, then moved into operations and marketing. So I didn't have the store experience that was of the people that I was serving in my operations technology role at Verizon. So it's super important to get out with those people that were in front of the customer and to see what those interactions were. See how they see what are the uncomfortable things that happen in those interactions, and how are they best dealt with? How do you best serve that customer? And again, from a systems perspective, there were things that you would not even understand how your system was working if you were, sitting in headquarters somewhere, because there's a way that a system is intended to be used for sales, and then there's the way that it actually ends up being used. And those aren't always the same thing. And you learn an awful lot. You basically learn what will the users of the system, what will the frontline rep get the most value out of. If you don't spend a decent amount of time with them, you can have the greatest strategy in the world, but your adoption will be in the tank.
So out of that, what were the strategies that kind of held true over a broader swath of the methodologies that you're trying to deploy?
Well, I guess there were a few. When I think about our, the role, I apologize, by the way, the dog, I don't know if you can hear the dog barking in the background.
Oh, no, it's fine. Actually, that plays into here at Dubb. We always talk about you don't need to have a fancy camera or like a fancy back, and these are those human moments are what we love. Like when there's a dog I think that's that's the power of video, and especially like a podcast like that. That's what humanizes us. So anyways, yeah, totally fine. Feel free to continue.
All right. Well, with all the system implementations that I've done, and in terms of thinking about the customer and that customer is different in different circumstances. So, but how you deal with them is somewhat universal. First, you do what you say you're going to do, like I mentioned. Being fully transparent. Don't have hidden agendas. Include people early. If you're rolling out, for instance, a large implementation, and some people have an inclination not to include everybody because they'll just muddy the waters. Well, training will get caught up eventually. We don't need to pull in training. It's completely the wrong approach. Even if you think there's a group that's not impacted by the implementation that you're involved with, include them. They'll let you know. They'll let you know whether and or how they're impacted, and become part of the team instead of being, somebody that finds out in the last minute and ends up being it being uncomfortable for them, and it hurts your long-term credibility. So Shannon, there are a lot of different roles that I had while I was at Verizon. And I'm just trying to think through what are those things that would be most interesting to your listeners. I don't know how many folks involved from a Dubb customer perspective are involved in system integration.
It's a broad swath: sales, marketing. I mean, I know you were involved with a Salesforce integration, which actually Dubb, we just announced a Salesforce integration of our own, which was pretty exciting when we launched that. So, well, maybe talk a little bit about that process.
Salesforce that implementation was really a great example of a lot of the principles of how you deal with a customer. Customers are people. You're just dealing with people as you're pulling a large project together. We had people from Deloitte. Julie Biller was our person in charge on that side from Deloitte, and Chris Zankov, Matt Fisher. There was several folks from Deloitte, and they worked with people on my team Tina Braley, and many others. There's too many to list. But you couldn't tell where their team stopped and our team started. It was such a cohesive group. And that was a really important part of that implementation. Again, involving people from every organization, every possible organization at the very beginning, inviting them, educating them about what we were trying to do, and learning as we went. It was so important for us to get something out in front of the reps, something out in the stores. From the point we signed the contract with Salesforce to the point we had something in stores was about 3.5 months. It was an extremely fast implementation. And
Wow.
That was kind of a basic level of capability that we could then see how were the reps actually interacting with the customers? How did the customers respond to the way we were communicating to them through Salesforce, and how we were using text messaging, and how we were linking those customers with the store managers that were closest to where they lived. So when they would come into the store, it was already kind of a warm handoff experience instead of just a cold introduction when they walked through our door. So people could set up their appointments. They'd come in, we'd know who they were, and all the little details around exactly how we worded the message, and when the reps got the news about there was a lead coming for them to talk with, and how we executed that in a way for it to be a cohesive experience for the customer, ended up having a tremendous impact on sales conversion rates, particularly for those customers who started an order online. Maybe they ran out of time, maybe they got frustrated, but they decided instead to maybe they just closed their app, closed their browser, left and ate dinner. We would then be able to reach back to them and say, hey, if there's any way we can be of a service to you, I'm John Walker. I'm from the store right down the street. Let me know if you'd like an appointment. Sometimes customers wouldn't respond. Sometimes customers would respond extremely well. So again, a little bit of the detail of that program. But
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, well, I mean, so I'm really also interested. I mean, I have to just jump to this part because the transition from that corporate world to the farming world. And is there any kind of lessons that you've brought, or maybe that you've learned now? I mean, because before we started the podcast, you shared with me that, of course, this has been a crazy time for the entire world. But one of the things that you did was transition from a corporate job to a farming based agriculture business, which is really interesting to me. So I'd love to hear about that process, like how that's been for you, and then also if there's any kind of business tactics you've learned from the agriculture side that's relevant for maybe all businesses.
Yeah, there are a lot less meetings in agriculture. I can tell you that for sure.
Yeah.
A lot fewer donuts too. I lost about 20 pounds when I started farming. So
that's amazing. I should start.
It's been
I've wanted to have a garden. I've wanted to have a garden, but now this inspires me to do more in this space because it's a fitness opportunity.
There you go. Let's see. Apple hasn't added that in their list of Fitness Plus yet. Farming doesn't. Agriculture isn't in there.
It should be. It should be. So how was that transition? Tell me about what brought you to this.
Well, I had done a little bit in the past. I was really interested in growing wheat, organically growing wheat. I had a 50-year-old combine, so I would do some planting, and it was good while I was working because you don't really have to do anything with wheat except when you plant it and when you harvest it. So it's a couple days a year, and that's it. So I started out with that and did sweet corn and tomatoes, and probably 24 different things. I don't need to list them all. Look, agriculture is hard. The farmers that do really well or do well at it, it's amazing. The more you know about it, the more you realize how little you know. I got in, had that run last summer, and I was growing lots of stuff. And it was getting around to October, and just no farming in the winter, really. You think. So I started thinking about what I could do with the greenhouse and what I might be able to do through the winter months, and that led me to microgreens. Microgreens happen to be a pretty profitable product in the agricultural market. So I thought I'd learn about that. Minimally, we'd have greens to eat in the house, right? Without going to the grocery store.
What are microgreens for those who don't know?
Microgreens, basically, it could be cabbage or kale or dill or anything that you would go to the grocery store normally and get full size. You start them, in my case, I'm growing them in soil, grow them for about 7 to 21 days. You cut them off and you eat the whole plant. And generally they're an inch high. They're not real big, but they have 4 to 40 times the nutrition of of their adult counterparts. So it's high nutrition. It's very, used a lot in posh restaurants and things for presentation. They also have an intense flavor that, the broccoli tastes like broccoli, for instance, but it's very strong. Arugula's got a great, strong flavor. So I started growing those and realized pretty quickly that I was doing well with it, and that maybe there would be some restaurants that would be interested. I had no idea how to get into restaurants. I didn't have any history in food service. So I started just taking samples to local restaurants and said, "Here, take this. See how you like it. Tell me what you can. I can do a lot more of this if you want." And I got about an 80% conversion rate on my sales calls through doing that. It was really, really good. And they would say, "Well, how much are these?" And this is where I guess it comes to the full transparency approach with your customer. And I wouldn't recommend this for everybody, but for me, I knew how much I had invested in them, but I didn't know what they were worth. Online it'll say $50 a pound, but I couldn't get my head around charging somebody $50 a pound. So what I would say to the chefs, and by the way, that's the person you deal with. You go to the chef at the restaurant, and I would just say, "Look, this price has to work for you for it to work for me. And it's got to work for me, or I won't be able to make these for you." And they all kind of, recognized I was looking for help from them to set the right pricing on the product. So the first 4 chefs that I started to deal with, I'm continuing to work with, and they're, we've got a great degree of trust. At one point I came into a chef and said, "Here you go." And he said, "How much is it?" I go, and I said a number, and he looked at me and said, "I'll give you 25% more than that." So,
wow.
I mean, that doesn't happen unless you've built trust with your customer.
So important. Wow. That's amazing. That goodwill. So is that one of the biggest lessons sort of that you think could apply to all businesses from your experience now moving from Verizon to microgreens? Yeah,
in terms of being trustworthy and honest, yeah, for sure. It matters. My approach wouldn't probably work great at Verizon, right? In that specific regard with regard to pricing, for sure. But knowing that you're being fair with the customer, when the customer knows you're being fair, and you've got their interest, they understand you're in business, but you've got their interest at heart as well. I think makes a world of difference. One of the things I said to these chefs, I said, "Look, guys, I know this is a lousy time to be adding cost to your business. If you're not using microgreens now, I'm coming around. You're a restaurant. You're in a takeout business. You don't know how many people are going to come from one week to the next." So one of the approaches I had was, I would say, "Okay, I'm going to bring you we'll just say 2 pounds of microgreens. If you don't use those 2 pounds, I don't want you to try to, push a half a pound of not so fresh greens on your customers. So next week, I'll give you credit for that half pound when I bring the next bundle. So you have zero waste, you have zero risk. And most of them said, "Oh, you don't have to do that." But it's not necessary. I've done it on a couple of occasions, and I've pointed out that I'm going to do it through the middle of the year. But that's a way that I'm kind of extending the olive leaf, or extending some risk and sharing some risk with them. So it is more of a partnership with those chefs than they have with their other customers, or other suppliers rather. And again, building those relationships and building that trust, I think is definitely gone a long way. I've gotten a lot of referrals in my business from one chef to the next.
Wow. Well, that's a lot. That's some great advice, I think. And thank you for sharing this journey from all different sides of business. And that's what we always like on this podcast, to get a lot of different ideas, and you definitely shared that. So thank you so much for coming on this podcast. And just to finish it out, is there anywhere people can reach you and learn more about what you do?
Sure. I mean, I've got a website, 3 willowsfarm.com, and info@3willowsfarm.com would be a way they could reach me directly.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much, John, for coming on the Connection Loop podcast. Until next time, I'm Shannon from Dubb.com, and that's it for today. Farewell, everyone. Yep. Bye-bye.